Welcome back to another episode of Q Points Podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray, sometimes known by my governments as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. What's happening, good people?
Jay Ray, I am super excited for this episode of Q Points because it's always fun when we have a guest on board. And this gentleman is a very learned and very cultured individual. And I'm super excited to chop it up with him as we discuss the beans and toast crowd across the pond in it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We got to talk about the influence that the UK has had on us individually, and of course, the music industry as a whole. We're going to talk about a time when the music industry was not depressed about having stars like it is now.
Yes.
But Jay Ray, let's please remind the people about how they can keep in contact with us and learn about all things Q Points.
Listen, y'all are here with us, and one of the easiest ways that you can support Q Points is by hitting the subscribe button. So whether you are watching us on video or whether you are listening to the show, wherever you are, click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever Q Points has a new show. If you are like, listen, I like those guys. I want to support them. I want to make sure that the lights stay on, that you see all these LEDs back here. Sir Daniel is like got the solid gold lights. I got these little red joints. If you want to keep the electric on in Q Points land, you can become a member on our website at qpoints.com. Just go over there and click the subscribe button. And what you can also do, and this is free, you can join our mailing list at magazine.qpoints.com. Yo, we be having a good time over on that mailing list. Just be like dropping gems. So as y'all know, we did our House Music Divas show. So if you were on the mailing list, you would also know that we dropped songs from House Music Divas that we didn't talk about. But you would know that if you was on the mailing list. And the very last thing is you can also shop for merch in our store at store.qpoints.com. And you can be fly because it's about to be fall, so you can get you your hoodies because it's about to start getting chilly. We have an amazing guest that is joining us, and I'm going to read his bio because it is amazing and brilliant and meaty. Jason Randall Smith's longtime personal passions involve music appreciation, sonic curation, and media preservation. While attending the State University of New York at Albany, he volunteered at WCDB Albany 90.9 FM, hosting several radio shows as a DJ and producing promotional spots for the station. As a writer, Jason penned music reviews and long-form articles for Impose magazine, as well as podcast reviews for the AV Club's Podmas column. In addition, his poem, A Lesson in Deterioration, was included in the book Soul Babies, Black Popular Culture and the Post-Soul Aesthetic by Dr. Mark Anthony Neal. Jason is the host and producer of Radio B-Sides, Both Sides of the Surface, a podcast championing independent and Creative Commons music in a variety of genres since August of 2005. August of 2005, y'all. Okay. He is currently the music director at Bonfire Radio in Brooklyn, where his curatorial duties help shape the sound of the station. Radio B-Sides has been broadcasting live on this station since February of 2015. Folks, welcome to Q Points, Jason Randall Smith. Hello.
Welcome.
Mama, I made it. I made it.
How you doing?
I'm feeling blessed and highly favored right about now. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you both, distinguished gentlemen and wonderful curators of content representing Black music history and culture. I can't say that I'm one of the day ones, but I've been watching and listening long enough to know that when it comes to guests, y'all don't just let anyone into your house.
Yo, thank you so much. We are grateful to have you here. As you know, we are fans of your show. We want to spend this time letting folks get to know you a little bit. So we want to talk a bit about your work and your history. And really, okay, so Sir Daniel and I at the top of the last segment was talking about asking our folks, like, where do they listen to podcasts, like, and all of that. So I'm curious for you, like, where do you check out your shows, and where do you find, for the folks that listen to Radio B-Sides, where are you finding that folks kind of tune into your show? We're just curious.
In terms of me listening, I tend to get online for the shows that I'm into, the latest episodes that I want, and get offline so that I can enjoy them in my personal time. I'm the guy that's downloading. I'm really not trying to stream for a long time. If I'm streaming, it's streaming on Mixcloud to get myself through a work day. That's how I'm streaming. When it comes to those podcasts though, I want to make sure that I have those all on the player lined up in the queue. So Saturday mornings when I got to do that laundromat run, that's the main podcast day. And best believe Q Points comes with me. Q Points most definitely comes with me on a podcast day. As for BSOTs and the listenership, considering all time, overwhelmingly on Apple Podcasts. Overwhelmingly. I mean, prior to it being Apple Podcasts and everybody just calling it iTunes, I mean, that's where most people were coming from. And that's more than likely still the case right now. I would say a good 75% of listenerships coming from there. And then after that, it gets broken down to a number of different places, Overcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Good Pods, few places.
Yeah.
Few places.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for for the acknowledgement, definitely on our part. We appreciate that. But listening to you break it down as far as where people are listening to you, it just goes to show that you've curated such an audience over the years for B-sides, for radio B-sides. But let's break that down, because I'm very curious about radio B-sides, both sides of the surface. Please tell us how you came up with that title, and then tell us about the show. What is the show about?
Before there was both sides of the surface, there was an email newsletter that came out monthly called On the Verge, which was anywhere from 1999 to about 2001. After which, threw up kind of a crude website real quick just because I had all this writing, all of these music reviews, all these live commentaries. But the closer that we got to the closing of a century and entering into a new millennium, I'm starting to see artists and sounds from the mainstream and the underground blending into each other. The closer that we got to, Y2K and all of that, the more that I saw the lines really starting to blur. It wasn't a solid line anymore. It was more of a dotted line. It's like an ellipsis. Sometimes you might have even seen like the line just kind of erased in the sand. And so the more that I thought about it, I said, it's not all about underground and it's not all about mainstream. Everything within the mainstream isn't, you don't have to have this adversarial attitude about the sounds and the artists coming out of the mainstream. Not everything has to be avoided in the mainstream, but at the same time, not everything that's underground is actually worth digging for. So in order to figure out a well-rounded perspective in regards to what's happening in music, you have to examine both sides. That's where both sides of the surface ultimately comes from.
I love that. That's so simple, and to the point, and you mentioned, wow, you brought up an era that I remember fondly, of the era of us going from analog to digital and how we consumed music. We were, I'm guilty of downloading stuff from LimeWire and Kazam and all those other different places as well. And, we found ourselves curating music, but finding different stuff in different ways. And now we're at a point where I think people, especially people, the musicians, creatives that are looking for some way to get into the music industry and looking for a way for themselves to be heard, a lot of people are taking the DIY route and are creating sounds. They figured it out. They figured out there's a lane for me to create music that can be used in other people's projects, and other, as background music. You hear other people's stuff in reality shows all the time now. So explain to our audience what the term Creative Commons licensed music is, and where does one find that kind of music?
Okay. Creative Commons, well, that's a nonprofit organization. They've been around for a little over 20 years. And some of what they do is basically democratizing copyright for the general public. And they're able to do that by creating these licenses that allow creators of works to offer their work up to the general public to be able to be used in a variety of different ways, depending upon the license that they've used in which to release their work to the world. So in the world of music, as it pertains to podcasting, it allows podcasters like ourselves to find these artists who have created their works under these Creative Commons licenses. And depending upon the ones that they use, they can be used to share their work, to adapt their work into other things, maybe a different video presentation, maybe a different audio presentation. Some of those licenses allow people to remix their work. It allows a podcaster like myself to be able to represent for those artists. So in terms of where you can find this music, there are a number of different websites. I mean, the granddaddy of them all, probably Internet Archive at archive.org. They got a special section for a place for net labels just being online labels, most of whom have music that they release under these Creative Commons licenses, often in a variety of different genres. Matter of fact, one of them's representing in the chat right now. Shout out to Block Sonic, the net label that put me on to Creative Commons music and does a great job for several years now, rolling up on a decade, I think. Actually longer than that, of releasing hip hop, at least releasing electronic music, releasing indie rock and pop stuff. And so I'm constantly on the hunt for various artists and genres of music that I feel like will represent the BSOTS brand well, and just showing people what's out there in terms of this other parallel universe of music, the stuff that keeps it rough, rugged, and real in terms of its underground feel. But there's some things that I found within the Free Music Archive. There's some things that I found on a site like Jamendo that's got such a polish and a sheen to it that, given a chance, it could hold its own against a whole lot of stuff getting played on Top 40 radio right now.
This is They Reminisce Over You. I'm Miguel.
And I'm Christina.
They Reminisce Over You is a podcast that celebrates and honors the best in music, movies, and TV from the past.
We get into the careers and legacies of some of the biggest names in hip-hop, R&B, and pop culture. From discussing the groundbreaking music of Missy Elliott and Mary J. Blige,
to exploring iconic moments in TV and film like the chaos at the 95 Source Awards. They Reminisce Over You has something for everyone.
So join us as we reminisce over the artists, movies, and TV shows that have shaped our lives and continue to influence popular culture today.
We definitely hear that your ability to curate, and you could tell that you love going into these spaces and pulling this music down and discovering it. Because I know that me personally, when I listen to your show, I feel like I'm always making a list. I'm glad that now I can see where what the songs are, because I'm like, what is this and where did it come from? Like, I need to know, right? Um, and the other thing that we also recognize with your show is just the way that you present the music, the way that you construct the shows. So it's really clear that you come from a radio background, right? We can hear it in
For
your
sure can hear it.
voice,
Yes.
right? You can hear it in your voice, but you can also hear it in the way that you construct your shows. When did you fall in love with radio in that format?
It had to be just hanging out, listening to New York radio from back in the day. I mean, you had Kiss FM, you had WBLS, you had WKTU. So, for those of us who are old enough to remember when you had to be listening to the radio at a certain time to catch hip hop,
Right.
so that's all three of us, and I'm sure the heads in the chat room can bear to witness. If you remember that, there are certain personalities and certain shows that are just going to stick with you. Cool DJ Red Alert will always stick with me.
Yes.
Mr. Magic's Rap Attack, Marley Marl, Sir Juice. I mean, all of that's going to stick with me. But at the same time, you also had, like, over on KTU, there's Carlos De Jesus, and you had people like a Bob Slade and a Vaughn Harper and a Vi Higginson and all of these people. Just listening to how they were able to curate music and conversation was always fascinating to me. Just hearing the various perspectives that they brought, and often going beyond the single, beyond the staple cut, playing those album cuts, those side room selections, as it were, that may not necessarily get shine on some other frequencies. That's what really got me in regards to radio. And it only grew as I got older and would listen to college radio, whether it was New York University's WYNU, WNYU rather, or while I was up in Dutchess County, WVKR, the Vassar College station for Poughkeepsie, was insane. What I was hearing at that point was insane, particularly at a time when I was getting into techno, when I was getting into house, when I was getting into all these forms of underground dance music, and had an outlet where I was learning about everything at a time where it just seemed like there were 20 house anthems coming out a week.
Man, one of the things you are highlighting in your passion for the work that you do, and also telling these stories about radio, is how important terrestrial radio still is. Even though, of course, we have these outlets, right? We have podcasts, we have internet radio stations. But I find myself at my big age just listening to the radio way more often, right? And just kind of scrolling through to see what's on the dial, to see what I can check into. And I think we forget how important those personalities are. We talked about that when we talked about our Black women in radio. We had a show about that. But I just think it's really important. So thank you for re-highlighting how important that is, because I think we forget that it matters. And for a lot of people, radio might be the only way we act like everyone has access to the internet or a cell phone. That's just not true.
Yeah.
There are folks who are still listening to the radio because that's where they're able to access their music. When we did our Father's Day show, we got a message from you. You listened to the show, and you shared with us a show that you'd done in memory of your father.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that thing broke us down. That thing wore us just because it was so honest, And so how much did your dad play into how you hear and interpret and kind of curate music? Because I imagine there's some of that in there.
Music was always around, and anytime I'm rolling around with dad in the green Cadillac Eldorado,
Uh, yeah.
the 8 track was blasting.
Yes.
The 8 track was blasting. It was Birthday by the New Birth. It was the self-titled album from Ray Goodman and Brown. It was A Real Mother for You by Johnny Guitar Watson. I can even remember that Betty Wright live album. So there were a couple of things. But I mean, the siblings, as far as, my father and my mother were concerned, aunts and uncles on both sides of the family, they was all listening to music. But heading over to my, to see dad, was going down into that basement of the grandmother's spot and just seeing nothing but records. The first thing I see is a record player, and on either side there are these spindles, and on these spindles just stacked with nothing but naked 45s, just stacked. So that's what I remember. Me spending time with all these little records, and me rummaging through the full lengths and the 12-inch singles, and that's both sides of the family, seeing that red heart-shaped 7-inch vinyl of Bobby Caldwell's What You Won't Do for Love before I really understood just how big that record was going to be.
Wow.
And how a record like that was going to stand the test of time. Just little nuggets like that. And then getting older and understanding that everything that you're listening to came from those crates.
Yes. Oh my God.
And wanting to go back. And the reason why I read liner notes like canonized literature right now is because of those moments.
Yes.
Those are the moments that make us. Those are the moments that shape us, where we understand how the dots are connected because of who was playing on what session, who was the engineer for what session. You get to know names like Rudy Van Gelder. You get to know names like Creed Taylor, and you get to know labels like CTI and Kudu and Impulse, and on and on down the line. You understand how important these things are and how they all fit together, so that when soul babies like us growing up with hip hop in its infancy and watching it mature and getting to the place that it is now, and having the understanding that it's all coming from somewhere. Nothing's necessarily new under the sun, but there's always a different way that it can be repackaged, that it can be remixed, and that it can be represented. So yeah, dad had a hand in it. Mom had a hand in it. Aunts and uncles definitely had a hand in it.
For sure. Sitting here listening to you talk about, waxing sentimental about your family, I think we can all agree, all of us sitting here listening right now and speaking, when those of us audiophiles, when we get a chance to be alone with music, we are definitely transported. For some of us, and I'll share some more later on, you know, my mind is opened up to other places outside of where I was, outside of the small apartment in Brooklyn. My mind would go to other places overseas. And what I pick up from you, Jason, is that I get that you have an ear for a lot of things that have like an international feel. And so I'm just wondering, had you spent any time overseas? If so, did that have an effect on the things that you listen to, and just basic and all around? You kind of told us, but all around, did it have an effect, an influence on the sounds that you're attracted to?
Interestingly enough, I really haven't been too many places. It's rare that my feet get out of the States. Matter of fact, the only time really that I've been out of the States, and it was maybe a hop, skip, and a jump, that was Cancun, Mexico for the honeymoon back in 1999, man. I mean, that's it. That is it. Okay. That's it. I live vicariously through the music. I
Yes.
allow the music to take me to places that I haven't yet been, but am hoping to go. And there are trusted selectors in this world. Giles Peterson is a trusted selector. So, you listen to him on BBC Six Music, it's him and Rebel Dread, Don Letts. He's another one, Culture Clash Radio. But, but shout out to Giles in terms of what he tried to do with Worldwide FM.
Yeah.
Bringing so many different selectors in. I mean, now you want to talk about a station that got me through a pandemic?
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Outside of my home team, Bonfire Radio family, Worldwide FM, that one got me through the pandemic for real. So listening to them, all of those different tastemakers and the personal stance that they put on their own mixes, some of them making their own music, all of that had a way of making me want to seek out what I didn't already know all the time. And sometimes that's sometimes that can be a hard sell as a podcast or just as a way of life and a frame of mind, particularly when we were deep in it. COVID-19 had us deep in it. 2020, all heads wanted was creature comforts.
Right.
That's
Period.
right.
We wanted the stuff that we knew that was getting us through day to day before it all got turned upside down. Right. So when everybody was trying to make community the best way they could, being together apart, it's no wonder that something like D Nice's Club Quarantine was so popular.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he was making community in real time with the soundtrack to people's lives, which is a really important thing to do at the time that happened. But I do believe that I think it's really important to spend time getting out of a sonic comfort zone. And college radio has allowed me to do that. My time listening to public radio and BBC Six Music has allowed me to do that, allowed me to tap into music that's been happening on various different sectors of the globe. I'm a Bandcamp devotee, so I'm always running up and through Bandcamp, listening. Shout out to Andrew Jervis, hosting Bandcamp Weekly. I mean, that dude knows something about music because he was running Ubiquity Recordings back in the day. So that's a big deal. That's when I figured out that he was pretty much the main curator and hosting a weekly show. I was just like, okay, no other place I need to go. he's already given me so many great moments within college radio as a label, just one of the strongest independent labels stateside, that, how could I not want to tune in on a weekly basis to this guy and see what he's finding and presenting to the people. Hopefully I can break off a little something like that in terms of what I'm doing with the radio B-sides. So, it's just not, it's the Creative Commons space is a very niche space. and it's something that a lot of people aren't used to. So I figure if I make these short playlists, give them just enough information to where somebody who doesn't already know about Creative Commons might want to get curious. Because to have a song that makes them say, oh, wait a minute.
Several times.
That's like that's like that, like that's available for us to download, for us to share, for us to rock with in a podcast sense. Let me find out. That's always what I want to do, whether it's within a podcast or a broadcast sense. That's always the thing that I want to do. Get people more curious and hopefully bring out the crate digger in them.
Well, Q Points family, it's so obvious and plain to J. Ray and me that Jason Randall Smith is definitely family. He is definitely part of the Q Points. He's Q Points coded. Like, just listening to you speak about the record labels and reading liners, that's us all the way, all day long. And so we're all about connecting each other, connecting with other audiophiles and other people who are just in tune with this Black music history and just music, period. Please let everyone know how they can keep in contact with you and find you and BSOTs and everything so that they can get all things Jason Randall Smith.
All right. So probably the easiest thing to do in terms of the podcast Radio BSOTs, that's simply bsots.com, BSOTS.com. I am on the socials across Instagram, across Facebook, across that place that we now are calling X for whatever reason.
We don't get it.
It's not a favorite.
Why Elon felt the need to choke out the bird, I have no idea. What did the bird ever do to him? I don't understand. But across all of those things, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, simply BSOTs. Come holler at me, come share music. And that's mainly the places where you can find me. I spend an insane amount of time on Mixcloud, so by all means, follow me there as well. Mixcloud.com/Jason Randall Smith, Mixcloud.com/Macedonia. Always sharing things that I am listening to that I believe will bring much light and much sonic sustenance into someone else's day.
Sonic sustenance. I love that. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode of Q Points. You have really added some shine and sheen to what we do over here and have really put us up to another echelon. So we appreciate you for being a part of the show. J. Ray, let the people know how they can continue to follow us with Q Points.
Yeah. So y'all, wherever you are listening to the show, make sure that you hit subscribe. And I didn't say this earlier, but share the show with your friends, right? So if you like Q Points, chances are you have friends, family, colleagues, co-workers, doctors. I told you my doctor now listens to Q Points because I talked about the show. Share it with them. Let them know about it because they might get into it. If you want to support us as well in another way, monetarily, you can do so by becoming a member on our website at qpoints.com. Just clicking the subscribe button. Another free way that you can support us is by joining our newsletter, which is really dope. We'll probably have some really dope stuff in the newsletter as it relates to these topics that we're talking about. So you need to, because there's so much stuff that we didn't get a chance to get into. It's going to be perfect for the newsletter. And last but not least, shop our store.qpoints.com.
Well, for the Q Points podcast, I am DJ Sir Daniel.
My name is J. Ray, and that's Jason Randall Smith.
And you've been listening to the Q Points podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. J. Ray, what do I always say in this life? You have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. This has been Q Points podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. We'll see you on the next go round. Peace.
Peace.